Okay, hello, Assalamualaikum, and a good day to you, all of the class ADS510. And today, I would like to present about our chapter 4 regarding on theory in international relations. Okay, so let's start. Okay, so we're going to start with the developments of international relations. We're going to look how actually the evolutions of the theories, how actually the theory influence the international system in the first place, and we like to see in a modern era, modern era, the developments of a new theory, the new approach that actually play a vital role in international relations. Okay, this is the course outline. So the course outline. So it is about at the end of the topic, at the end of the slide, so you will understand basic theories of international relations, able to explain basic theories, understand about the realism theory, able to list down theory in IR, and also able to explain basic theory of IR. Okay, so theory has a progressive development. If you look at the history itself, the major two theory that emerged in IR, which is the realism and also liberalism, or we call it as idealism. So the development and also changes, it is also the reasons of the reasons of the sovereign statehood. Okay, so uh, in IR, in international relations, state are the main actor. So that's why it influences a lot of things in IR. For example, people are having war because of state. People make operations because of state. And also, in terms of applied theory, for example, each state wanted to adopt more liberalism. Each state feel that security is important to them. So the development and also changes also influence and also uh, rely with the state, and also we call it as a sovereign state. Okay, so we're going to discuss on theoretical discussion between IR scholar. So major debates emerge, in terms of theory. For example, by the IR scholar focusing on realism and liberalism. So most debate says that which is the better or the best theory that can be implemented and make the world peace. For example, uh, got some scholars says realism is a good because realisms always taking care about security, always focus on national interest. I always take care of the state, and some of them says that rebel idealism or liberalism is good because of what? Because of liberalism encourage cooperation. When they encourage cooperation, so they might settle all the issues without having a war. And realism feels that the ultimate or the main foreign policies that can actually make a world in peace is you have to win the war. Okay, so from before Cold War, from World War Two, from World War One, and until now, the debates of theory is still in and still right now still happen. Okay, we're also going to touch on other disciplines, philosophy, history, for example, economics, law, and others. So the other discipline also has a theory. So, for example, in economy, we have some sort say from Karl Marx, class struggle says that the equality is very important rather than capitalist, right? And also we're gonna look at the new theory, for example, like neorealism and also neoliberalism, that actually being adopted by the world right now. Okay, liberalism and idealism. Basically, main big theory that actually has a lot of history. So no scholar agree in certain set of theory that could explain international relation in terms of dynamic nature. Because some scholar says that realism is the best, and other scholar says liberalism is the best. So still, until now, these two approach being implemented by all the state. The trend setting, for example, we can look at Cold War, which is an ideological war, because Cold War is a proxy war. War never happens between US and Soviet Union, but war occur because of the proxy. For example, Korean War being proxy by America and also Soviet. America support South Korea and Soviet support North Korea. It also reflect the Vietnam War that actually happened in Asia. So that's why Cold War is called ideological war. Okay, okay. This is about realism lah. For example, uh, every state has their own military, and most of the state, for example, in African, they still live in conflict. So why this happen, right? Because idealism says, when the end of World War II, for example, when the end of World War II and the emerge of the United Nations, people in international system or international relation feels that after World War II there will not be any war that occurs, and world are heading to the state peace. But until now, still we still have United Nations as our buffer. Buffer means a protector, okay, as our buffer zone, a protector. But until now, most of the state, although we as a Malaysian also affected in terms of conflict or crisis. So it feels that uh, the conflict is a never-ending process. So why this happen, right? People are killing. People still live in hunger. Genocide still occurs. For example, until now still happen. For example, in Myanmar, in in Sierra Leone, in Africans, they are much affected. But still, we cannot create a world peace until now. Okay, when we talk about international relation, the biggest theory that emerged in IR is realism. IR emerged and dominating international relation or international system after the World War II. And before the World War II, so IR play a vital role in terms of any war that occur in the history. For example, we start with Polynesian War. When Thucydides play a major role in writing and telling a storytelling about the Polynesian War that occurs between Sparta and and the Greece people. Okay, the policymaker and also the army of the state. For example, if you look at Sparta, they are military. They are trained to engage war. And if they going war with the Democrats or with the policymaker, okay, so obviously Sparta will win. So that's why Thucydides says that if you want to create a good and also a peace state, you must have power. First, you must have a good military. And also the third, you must win the war. If you win the war, that is the ultimate pleasure that you can gain. Because realisms always feel that international system is anarchy, which means the international system don't have rules. So you create your own rules. So that's why realism feels the best decision is going war and win the war. Okay? State use power to pursue IR and rationally use power to pursue the international national interest. Sorry. Okay? So every state they have their own national interest. National interest means each state when they want to deal in terms of foreign policy, so they will look at what benefit that state get. Is it good or not? If not, they won't enter or they won't follow the rules. If good, they will go and cope with the situation. So that's why national interest is very important. Every state have their own interest. For example, if you look at Malaysia, Malaysia has our own interest. Our main interest is to protect our security. Second, to protect our people, or 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 the people, or Malaysian people. And this is the most important. If anything, any policies or any engagement that reflect this both, so Malaysia will not in, go and engage with the policy. Okay, and the third, realism view nature of man as bad, aggressive, and evil. Many realism scholars says that men are born with ego. Men are born with evil. So men have a evil feeling. You know, so that's why every man are bad to them. So they don't trust people. Men means state. They don't trust state. That's why it's hard for them to make an engagement with other state or cooperation. For example, if you look at North Korea right now, North Korea don't actually go and engage with United Nations. And even United Nations, North Korea were not a member in UN because they feel that when they make relation with the democracy state, the influence of democracy will actually uh, dominate North Korea and they will change the ideology. Okay, so that's why most of realism people or most of realism state they will not go and make any engagement. War is a natural. They feel war is an absolute foreign, is an absolute way to get international peace. You know, and also war holds pessimistic view on peace. So when you win the war, you will get the ultimate peace. Peace. Okay, in terms of realism, they have a lot of uh, type of realism. For example, okay, start with the history, which is what we call as classical realism. Then uh, you have modern, which is the neorealism, and and this is a modern realism. Uh, uh, Neorealism, which is adoptions of classical and still the characteristics of realism is still there. Okay, so we're gonna look at the first will be the what is classical realism is all about. Okay, so classical realism was developed in 80s. It respond to the utopian ideas prevalent during the interwar period and sought to balance moral decision-making with the rational pursuit of power. So the major writer and contributor to realist tradition like Hans Morgenthau, they says that the co-founder or the the, the fathers, okay, of realism is Thucydides. Okay, so regarding on the conflict between Athens and also Sparta, in terms of in having war that called Polynesian War. Okay, so the philosophical doctrine of meaning of realism as a universal exit outside of the mind. So it is a real, the reality, the real things that happen. So that's why it's called realism. So as I said before, because of Thucydides, look and also analyze the war that happened between Sparta and Athens, and Sparta win the war because Sparta are military army, and Athens are the policy maker. They are the the Senate member. So they're not going engaging into war. But when they having conflict with Sparta, so they lose. So that's why if you look at most of the scholar, for example, not only Thucydides, Niccolo Machiavelli also, he also wrote one book which is called The Prince, and Karl Marx also, So they actually observe what actually happened in their time. For example, Niccolo Machiavelli looks at Napoleon, what engaging with the rural, and also the ruler, and analyze what actually happened and what actually the king of the state did to maintain their peace. So that's why they wrote what actually they look and also observe. So same with the Karl Marx. When Karl Marx saw that the elite people take advantage uh, to uh, the what the proletarian, or we call it as the low class people. Okay, the low class people. So Karl Marx says that this is not good, and because of the advantage, the low class people make revenge, and they conquer the system, and this is not good. That's why Karl Marx come up with the equality, the class struggle, right? The equality. So every people must have equality, get equal salary if you work. So that's why the idea of communism emerged, because of the idea of socialist emerged because of the karma ideology. So because they observe, they wrote, and they analyze, and then it become a theory right now, because of because of the all the historian scholar. Okay, the philosophy of the doctrine means of realism as a universal exit outside of the mind. So while in the field of international relations, so realism became the dominant of analytical paradigm, mostly after the start of the Second War, when it displays idealist doctrine. For example, war actually is a realism perspective. As I said, so in engaging the war, for example, uh, on World War II, for example, when Hitler on 1939 feels that he want to conquer all the world, he feels that when he conquer all the world, he will become dominant. And because of that, he actually started the World War II, and then being finished by the Japan. And the Japan's feel also they are Asian people, and they are a modern people, that they feel that they can conquer the world, and they try to uh, go and spread the ideology and try to conquer the world, but yet they lose to England and the US, the the Britain Allied, we call it. Classical realism is a state level theory. Okay, so that argue that all states seek power, which is driven by desire to achieve national interest. So power is the key concept of realism. And they argue that to survive, or state must increase their power by internal development, such, such as the economic system, technological, diplomatic, and military means. Okay, so bear in mind, in classical realism, there are some point, some subset that are important and also characteristic, important characteristic in classical realism. First, you have to know uh, the first thing, state is the actor. Second, power is the most important thing. The third, state are always rely on their national interest. Okay. Four, war, gaining war is the absolute uh, tool to get good, to get peace or to being better in international system. And last, realism sees that international system are anarchy, right? They don't have power. That's why they wanted to rule. They want to become the absolute power and rule the world. So these 5 points are very important in classical realism. Later on, I will analyze why classical realism are different with the neorealism. Although realism is an approach of classical realism, but yet in modern war, in modern world, we actually uh, cannot adopt all of the character of classical realism because some of the character are uh, for the state actually cannot be implemented right now. For example, war. If let's say Malaysia and Indonesia had problem, right? For example, in terms because of the haze, every year has come from Indonesia and pollute our air, right? So we cannot go and simply and create war with Indonesia. So but they have strategy. For example, in terms of realism. No realism says that yes, war is not war never happen in modern era, and war would be not the best decision. But yet, you have to take care of national interest. They have some reason they have some strategy that you can go and approach. For example, what we call as the game theory. For example, you can bargain to Indonesia. If bargaining power, for example, you can use because Indonesia always depend on us because of most of Indonesian people come over to Malaysia to work, right? So that tool we can use to protect our state and also to 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 make our security more better. Okay, so that is one of the reason why neorealism are different with classical realism, but yet although they adopt the same ideology, but yet in terms of in modern war, there are some character by the classical realism cannot be adopted by the neorealism. Okay, the theory. Okay, and second, the theory argues that states seek to increase their power and decrease the power of their enemy, and everything they do in the name of power accumulation. So everything that state do, they will think about power. For example, if you want to make friends, if you want to go and engage with ally, they will feel that, oh, this is because of power. For example, you build up military equipment, you build up nuclear power because of what? You wanted to become absolute power. For example, you can look at United States. Why United States until now go and interfere all of the state? You know, even in Asia also, US wanted to interfere because they wanted to become absolute power. So because of power, and US feel that if they don't have power, United States are not gonna be a good state. So that's why wanted to have power so they can rule the world and they can become dominant. So state in this theory see other with power as enemies. Okay, for example, in Cold War, United States look at USSR is their enemy because USSR can dominate the world on that time of period. So that's why in Cold War they have two big superpower that we call as a balance of power. You know, ataupun or for example, bipolar, right? Bipolar system. So because power when it's not in your hand is a threatening. Okay, if you don't have power, you feel threatening. Okay, let's look at the classical realism according to philosopher. Okay, the first is the Thucydides. Okay, the founder as classical realism. So Thucydides says that human nature is the main causes of realism happen because of human. Human are born as nature. Natural. They have ego, right? They have self-interest. They are uh, tamak kan, for example, right? They wanted to have power, they are greedy. So because of the nature, this rallies happen. Thucydides believes that realism start from the war between Athens and also Sparta, where both ethnic fight among them to see what is the most powerful, what is the most powerful group on that period. So they believe that by having power, then the independent nation will be described as powerful. Okay, so that is not ethnic. Maybe you can put some correction. Okay, that's not ethnic. Okay, between Athens and also Spartan groups. Okay. Okay, second, you can look at Niccolo Machiavelli. Niccolo Machiavelli wrote his book, which is called The Prince. In The Prince, Machiavelli uh, added some values in realism. Machiavelli is a classical Christian Protestant thoughts. And he feels that power is absolute. You must get the power, whatever it means. For example, if let's say it will you will violate your values also, you must violate your values. For example, his famous quote, and justify means, right? Matlamat menghalalkan cara. Any means, if you want to get power, go ahead and get the power in any means. He also said that it will be great to be both fear and love. So Machiavelli, or most of his theory, his play with values. It's better to be widely feared than to be greatly loved, right? So it feels that when you have power, you won't be feared, and you always want to become dominant and conquer the world. And ruler must adopt unpleasant policy for the sake of the continuance of his regime. That's why on that period, in the books, The Prince, so Machiavelli always describe about the nepotism. For example, you and political manipulations towards the people. So Machiavelli feels that it is good to preserve the power, and it's okay to do that as long as the state can remain his power and become a ultimate dominance. So you can do anything. For example, deceptions. Okay, Thomas Hobbes. Okay, Thomas Hobbes says that nature of man, there are three principal causes of quarrel, which are: first is competition, second is difference, and the third is glory. So this main three makes people wanted to compete to each other, right? For example, every state, wanted to become superpower. Even China right now are trying to dominate the Asia and also the world, right? By make competition in terms of economic and military, right? Even China wanted to expand their territorial, although Spratly Island is far away from their land, right? So because of the glory, when you have power, you become hegemony, you will get the glory, and all the state will obey to you. So that power that most of the state wanted to have. Okay. Okay. According to Leviton, one of the scholar says that describe Thomas Hobbes' uh, ideas of power, says that Thomas Hobbes always says that power to get the power is a restless work. You cannot rest to get the power. But we have to chase the power. What actually American do right now, he actually chase the power. For example, after 1990, you know, when after 1990, when Cold War ended, America become hegemonic power, or ultimate power, or some scholars says unipolar power. And then they don't have any enemies that can compete with America. But on 20th century, when China emerged as a new power, as a new coming power, America feel threatened about the uprising of China in international system. So until after that, you know, America chased the power and tried to compete with China until 2017 when Donald Trump being appointed as the president of America. Maybe you guys can remember his manifesto, for example, right? So one of his manifesto, he wanted to try to make America greater again. Why this is his manifesto? In his manifesto, why this manifesto wanted to be implemented by the Trump? Because the Trump look at the China become bigger because of the migrations of the GLC from America to China. For example, Apple, for example, Dell, Motorola, Levi's, and others. So when this GLMNC migrate from America and build their empire in China, so it actually developed China in silently, and China become very dominant right now because of this influence. So that's why Trump wanted to pull back every MNCs that operate in China. He wanted to pull back all the MNC back to United States. But until now, still this issue can be implemented because when you talk about MNC, when you talk about capitalists always focus on profit. They don't focus on the national interest. They don't focus on the nationalism, right? They don't care what's going to happen to American. Only they care if they lost the profit. So that's why they more get a lot of profit when they operate their company in China because of labor cost. If they pull back, they have to pay a bigger price. So that's why this idea cannot be implemented by the Trump until now, right? So this is what we call, in terms of the state cannot rest uh, to go and get the power. So it is not an easy job, and that's why America until now is still doing the same thing to remain as a absolute power in the international system. Okay. Thomas Hobbes also says that men live are full of cruelty, egoist, and they constraint, same like Thucydides, that is directly by sign of insecurity, fear in the state of nature. So in terms of realism also always look as perception, threat as a perceptions, or they call it as a security dilemma, For example, uh, the in Cold War, right? The emerge of uh, communism in Asia, when American failed to get Vietnam from the socialists, when Ho Chi Minh army can manage win the war and create a communist state in Vietnam, right? So on the other hand, most of the people says that, oh, if one state in Asia fall to communist, it might happen to all of the state in Asia because of the domino theory. Okay, so domino theory means one state falls, another state will follow. For example, maybe you guys used to play domino, right? If you have to what susun all the Lego, right? So you have to push one Lego and every Lego will fall. So it's like that. That actually create a security dilemma throughout the US and also the Allied, when and also the Allied when Cold War period, So in it means that realism always take care of their security, always put security is in the main thing. That's why they develop their military equipment. They develop their military asset because of they wanted to be uh, absolute, forever. Okay, so and number 4, anarchy. Place every man feel insecure and also distrust of each other. So they don't trust anybody because they always feel that if you being good to anybody, the people will betray you. Hope also argued that people would hurt each other because of high fear instead of nature, as they are naturally complete for wealth, for example. So, so these are main things that Hobbes actually describe about the realism. Yeah, Hans Morgenthau is a modern thinker. Okay, he's a modern thinker, and he's used to be he's a he actually create one magnum opus, which is Man, State, and International System. His book, you can find the book, and most of the our foreign policy or world foreign policy refer to Hans Morgenthau, And one of the founding fathers of realism, he actually described classical realism as a modern realism. So always power is a fundamental, as most fundamental of all political activity. Hans Morgenthau says that power is important thing. If you have power, you can rule the world. You can become dominant in the world. So he also agrees with Hobbes that man's feeling of insecurity, a security dilemma, are prevalent. He also add that the intellectual of moral history of mankind is the story of inner security. So, for example, as I said, security dilemma, right? So you fear to others. If let's say Malaysia, right? For example, Malaysia saw that Singapore buy a lot of military equipment. So it actually reflects, our security dilemma. We feel that, oh, why Singapore buy a lot of jet fighter? Maybe he wanted to attack Malaysia. Maybe he wanted to attack us. So that kind of scenario actually uh, happen throughout the world. For example, conflict that happen in the world. As I said, Korea and North Korea until now. If you look at last week, when America launched uh, nuclear weapon, and China also launched nuclear weapon on the other day, and on the third day, Russia also launched their nuclear weapon. Because of what? Because they feel that if one state are pushing to get the power, and it is a dilemma to other state. So the inner of security always being tested by this by the state, right? And it actually create an insecurity in international system until now. Okay, so scientific man versus power politics book has critiqued the ideas of liberalism or rationalism. Okay, yeah, this is the picture of Thucydides, Niccolo Machiavelli, Hans Morgenthau, and also Hobbes. Okay, so major assumptions of classical realism. Okay, first, human being human beings, okay, are selfish, interest maximizing creature. Human nature is not positive. Okay, so the first is people. People are greedy, insecurity. Okay, the first assumption will be people. People are greedy, insecurity, and also aggressive. And second, realism explain that state will act maximizing their own self-interest. Second would be the self-interest. Okay, even if they have to use force to gain power. For example, what actually being done by the United States. Third, state seeks power, and they calculated their interest in terms of power. Power is an absolute thing that are important in realism. And number four, the selfishness of individual is considerable to be the causes of base for conflict that emanates among individuals. Okay, and the last people is the key concept. Power is the key concept for realists, and they argue that in order for state to survive, they must increase the power. Okay, how they wanted to increase the power? By rebuild their military equipment or create a new dimension. For example, you build the power, right? You strengthen your ally. So a lot of things you can do to increase the power. Okay, the realist sees power as enemies. Because when power is not in your hand, it is categorized as threatening and also increase in fear. Okay. Second, international relations are basically a necessary conflict tool. Okay. So you look at the system, always most of the realist people, they will state, they will look as in international system as a conflict tool. And international and conflict are generally resolved by war. So only one decision that you might make, which is you have to go war and win the war. Every conflict must be resulted by war. So state that conflict is inevitable as states are eager to maximize their interests and also strengthen their security system. Okay, Hans Morgenthau stressed that international politics, like all politics, is a struggle for power. Power is always the immediate aim. Okay, realists argue that the international system is anarchy, in that there is no central government to guide the behavior of state in the international system. Right? For example, they don't trust ICJ. And number four is argue that the basic structure of IP, international politics, is one of anarchy because independent sovereign states consider themselves to be their own highest authority, and do not recognize a higher power above them. And due to the selfish concern, power, fear, and also immoral motive amongst human nature and human affair, there is no justice, in international system. Rather, the more powerful will always conquer the weaker. Or if you want to get justice, you have to be powerful, and then you conquer the weaker state. Okay, number third, national survival and each state security are above and beyond all the other matters. Okay, for example, survival. Survival is known as the most vital interest of all states, or we call it as state survival. You must survive. You must actually adopt uh, any you must adopt any strategy to survive in the international system. Although you are small state, you must be strong. You have to. If you feel that you're not strong, you have to find your ally. And become a stronger. So state always seeks way to maintain its territorial integrity. Territorial is number one. Very important things in terms of state, and autonomous power for their own politics. It might decide to adopt some immoral strategies such as war to survive. Okay, if let's say they feel insecurity, the state maybe wanted to invade them, so they might use war to survive. So state can still keeping up with their other goals, such as prospering the state and protecting the human right. But the state security will go beyond all those matters. Okay. Number four, unlike domestic political life, there cannot be progress in international policy because there is no superior agency that regulates the international system. So state emphasize the anarchy internationally. State always feel that the international are anarchy. There is no centralized authority on international level. For example, they don't feel that United Nations can take care of them, right? Because they feel that United Nations only take care of America, for example. No hierarchical superior coercive power that can resolve dispute. For example, they don't try ICJ, enforce law, or order the system of international politics. State can ultimately only rely on themselves. They only trust themselves when it comes to international emergency. They don't trust anybody. Okay, this is pro and cons. Okay, pro can achieve their state interest in terms of power. Example, Soviet Union, United States versus United States. Cons, ignore the humanity, peace of state, and always use power. War is not good. War will damage everything. Not create peace. Although you can get a peace, but you actually collateral a lot of things. For example, human, right? Self-help system make cooperation difficult. They don't trust in terms of cooperation to achieve. Okay. So let's start with modern realism, but I will continue with another video. Okay. On uh, the other video, which is the volume 2. Okay. So thank you for your hearing.